Okay, in this video I'm going to do problem 4 from homework 5. I hope this helps you for your semester. And problem 4 reads, given that the data rate of a DS2 signal channel is 6.315671 megabits per second, and that the data rate of a DS1 is supposed to be 1.544 megabits per second. Sorry for the typo there. Calculate the total. I'm going to use the correct value here. You can follow along with your numbers if you've used that incorrect value and check your problem that way. Calculate the total overhead bit rate in the DS2. What's the overhead bit rate per DS1? What percentage of overhead does this represent? And given that the DS2 frame has 1176 bits in it, calculate the frame rate. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw a little picture and say that a DS2 is equal to 4 times DS1 plus overhead. Sort of a rough concept there. And so I have a DS1, I've got another DS1, 3, 4 of them, and they're all going to be multiplexed together to make a DS2. Okay, and so the data rate for a DS2 is given as 6.315671 megabits per second, but the rate of a DS1 is only 1.544 megabits per second. And what we're going to find is that 4 times the data rate of the DS1 is a little bit less than the data rate of the DS2, and that extra data rate represents an overhead. And so you can look at that overhead as an overhead data rate, and you can look at that overhead as an overhead data rate per DS1 by dividing by 4 to get a per DS1 value. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and say that the rate for DS2 is equal to 4 times the rate of a DS1 plus the rate of the overhead. And therefore, the rate of the overhead is equal to the rate of the DS2 minus 4 times the rate of the DS1, which is 6.315671 minus 4 times 1.544, which turns out to be 0.139671 megabits per second. This is all megabits per second. Okay, or 139.671 kilobits per second. Okay, so pretty good data rate there. In part B, so that was part A. In part B, we're going to say that the rate of the overhead per DS1 is just ROH over 4, which is 139.671 divided by 4, or 34.92 kilobits per second. Okay. For part C, it asks what percentage of overhead does this represent, and I could either do the 139 out of 6.315 as a ratio, or I could do the 34 out of 1.544 as the ratio. So for part C, the overhead as a percentage is, let's just use the 0.139 over 6.315, both in megabits per second. And this, if you do the division, it gives you a 2.2% overhead. Okay. Finally, for part D, the frame rate, our frame is equal to bits per second times frames per bit, or bits per second divided by bits per frame. And we're given the number of bits per frame. So the frame rate is equal to the bit rate divided by the length of the frame. Okay, and so the units on this, well, I'll do the calculation first. 6.315 times 10 to the 6th bits per second divided by the length of the frame, which is 1176 bits per frame, and I get 5370.5 frames per second. Okay, and the units on this are frame rate is frames per second, and that's equal to bits per second divided by bits per frame, and that works out. Okay, so hopefully this helps you with problem number 4 in homework 5. Thanks.